Hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the stream. Quick stream today. Maybe. I currently have the feeds running, so I am currently listening to a conversation. I apologize for the lack of cohesion. I am sleep deprived. My eyes are bloodshot. Force, thank you for gifting. I'm listening to the conversation right now. Basically, Keanu is continuing to lie to Jimmy about his vote. What is he doing? He is literally hopeless. He's lying to Jimmy and continuing to blame Rachel for all of his problems. It's wild. It's actually wild. Jimmy offering to Keanu, I will put up Will for you. When that was already his plan. I will do a quick recap, quick get you up to date the second I have a break in this conversation.1 hour later. I don't know if there's too much left in this conversation that's actually worthwhile. Why? Why is he gunning for Will? I can get Adrian to do it too. You're just sinking Adrian's ship, dude. And he's also saying he really likes Kelly. I mean, all Keanu's doing here is reminding Jimmy how important it is to get at least one of Adrian or Kelly out this week. Jimmy should also not be saying, I can guarantee 5 votes this week. That's just. I get why he's saying it. I just don't think he should be. I mean, he's saying it to Keanu, so it doesn't really matter, I think, but. I mean, if we're being honest, throwing Will up there instead of Amy is a better move for Jimmy. I just don't really want that to happen. I will give a recap, I promise. Jimmy is assuming he might need to make 2 noms, yeah, because it's very likely that. I mean, very, very basics. Keanu has a veto. He's coming off the block. Kelly has her additional veto opportunity. So Jimmy is trying to prepare for 2 potential renoms. Kelly will decide whether she wants to use her veto thing at the ceremony. And of course, she should use it, but who knows? Okay, this is starting to feel like it's looping. So here's the update. Hopefully, people have managed to come in. If people start asking a little bit later, we can refer them to this moment about 10 minutes into the stream. Basically, and I apologize for those watching back after the fact, but you know, these are this is the nature of the lives. So Keanu's power turns out was it's not exactly a doubling of your chances, right? Because there were 7 people that played in the veto. So technically it was slightly less than double, I believe. It would only be double your chances if you removed. No, there were only 6. Okay. Right, because he used it at the picking thing. Okay, okay. So it is exactly double. I stand corrected. Um, Ava the nom's in the HOH, right? Because there's three. Right, and that's why they were talking about Ava. I did, by the way, watch Superman during the veto competition. Instead of taking a nap, essentially. That was perhaps a mistake, but it was a good movie. I really liked it. I thought it was good. So Keanu's power was that he got to have an alumni, a previous player, join the veto competition. So there were still 6 players, but there was a vet playing with them. They were speculating, of course, who is it going to be? A lot of people thought it would be Tucker. Kelly was like, oh, what if I beat Tucker in a competition? I had the thought, by the way, I was like, I feel like there are some alumni that would refuse this ask of Big Brother, that would say, sorry, I'm busy. Why, you might ask? Why? Because imagine a comp beast player, reputation for being really good at comps, comes in for one competition against a batch of newbies and loses. You know what I mean? I think there are some players that would not want that to happen. So the person that did come in turns out was Casey Clark. And why wouldn't she come back? She's doing the challenge all over the place, you know. She doesn't care if she loses. So Casey comes in, plays in the veto. Casey wins the veto. She was good at comps. She really was. She retired from the challenge. What I mean is that she did the challenge. But I think that people who did the challenge are much less precious about their reputation. Because, you know, they did the challenge. So Casey comes in. She schools all these new players. And she wins the veto, which means that Keanu wins the veto. And that means Keanu's coming off the block. From what I heard, it was Adrian in second place, which is pretty brutal for Adrian. But what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? All right, let me listen to this convo. Is he saying he'll do Will over Amy? Because he also just promised Kelly he'd do Amy. I mean, he doesn't have any reason to actually go along with what he's telling Keanu, although he actually kind of does. I mean, wow, yeah. I mean, this is better. This is a much better plan. If Keanu really wants Will, he can do Will, send Will out, or Adrian. That's not any skin off of his back. He has no relationship with Will. He doesn't have to piss off Amy, Ashley, Rachel as much. He pleases Keanu. Vince can keep Kelly in check. It is the better play. But he'll probably need to put both up anyway. I mean, that's the thing too, is that like, given that he likely needs to put up both anyway, it's if Keanu really cares about it being Will first, I think. Anyway, let me get back to the story so you know what I'm talking about. So Keanu has a veto. He's going to use it. This means that Jimmy needs to replace Keanu with a nominee. And He's been thinking Amy. Reason being, Amy doesn't do anything for his game. He doesn't think Amy's likely to win a competition. He thinks that taking Amy out of the game is not bad for him. Caroline the 17th. I don't necessarily agree with him, but it's like, what I will say is, I think that nominating Amy as a pawn is not a good idea. I think that nominating Amy as your target is fine, but I think also not amazing for Jimmy. I think that, like, I mean, now that he's talked about it, it's a whole other story. But, like, Jimmy's got problems in the house, and Amy's not really one of them. Amy's a great person for other people to nominate, like, on any given week. She adds to Rachel's threat level, which is good for Jimmy. Like, there's just, it's kind of useful to have Amy in the house, in my opinion, for Jimmy, especially given that she is, again, not a problem for him. She's not targeting him in any capacity. You know, it's she's just not a problem. There are people that could be problems. He knows that Keanu's one of them. Adrian is one of them. I don't know why he wouldn't want Adrian to ideally leave in that spot. Obviously, he needs to nominate at least a second target. Kelly leaving is fine for him. Although, again, I do think Vince can handle Kelly if he can rely on Vince, which he can't. Ashley, he's worried about putting on the block because she won the veto last time. And so that's obviously a problem. He said he doesn't want to sit next to Amy on the block. I mean, this is the thing, though. Like, if somebody's targeting Rachel and they put up Jimmy and Amy and Rachel, yeah, he might be like the second target amongst Amy and like after Rachel, but not necessarily. And if Amy's not there, then what? It's Amy, it's Rachel, Ashley, and Jimmy. And he's theoretically less likely to win a blockbuster and still probably up on the block. I mean, in that spot against, say, Ashley. Maybe Ashley is more likely to go in that spot. Maybe, but I feel like this is such a reach for like a specific scenario that you don't really need to pay attention to in the first place. Again, I feel like just, HOH can be very simple. It is just, who is a problem for me? Who would I not mind seeing go? And move from there. I don't think Amy's disastrous for his game in the way that, like, nominating Morgan would be or something, like, but I do think he has better options. I think Riley is a very good option for him. I think that Will is unfortunately not a bad option for him. The thing with Will is that Will is currently in some hot water for his vote. He has a reason to target Will. And that will give him some justification. That will, prevent any of Will's allies from being overly mad about the nomination. And so I don't think he needs to be super concerned about that. Whereas him nominating Amy, I think, is a direct sign to Amy and Ashley and even potentially Rachel long term that Jimmy can't be trusted. That at the first given opportunity, he nominated Amy for no good reason. And that's no good. And what it also does is it frames the house in the exact same way that it was framed last week, where now Rachel is going to be campaigning for Amy to stay, using every like ounce of her will to make that happen. And if Jimmy is on the other side of that, then he has just, like, for as much as Rachel may say it's fine to nominate Amy, if he's campaigning against Amy over the course of the week, and Rachel's on the other side of that, that is going to pull them apart. That is going to be bad news for their relationship and whatever comes of it. And some people may find opportunity in that. Maybe there's a worthwhile reason to keep Amy around over somebody like Will or Adrian. Certainly, if Adrian's up on the block next to Amy, you really think people are going to not vote Adrian out, the person who came in second to Casey Clark? Like, there's a lot of reason to potentially do that. So I think there are some potential fallbacks. No, fallbacks is not the word I'm looking for. Potential failure points to this. Riley talking to Jimmy again. Pitfalls is what I was looking for. Thank you. Somebody asked, why do I say unfortunately for Will? I mean, the thing is, at this point, it's kind of unfortunate for anybody that gets evicted. Will has been playing the game. I think he made a mistake, but like it would kind of suck for him to get sniped out of the game in this particular way. It would be kind of his fault, but he would also get pretty unlucky. I think the same thing goes for Adrian. It would suck to see him go this way. It was kind of his fault, but it would suck to see him go this way. Honestly, Amy, like, I'm frustrated with the way that the other players are talking about Amy. However, I'm also frustrated with the way Amy is talking about Amy and the way Amy's talking about Rachel. Because Amy is like full on blaming Rachel for the position she's in, which is wild. We need to say this. It needs to be said. It's wild. The fact is, Amy was always going to be a pawn this season. Always. As far as we know, the reason Amy went up on the block in the first week was not due to her connection to Rachel, but her connection to Ashley. If that was even the reason at all, because again, the fact of the matter is the way that people view Amy, fair or not, and I don't think it's fair, was always going to be the reason Amy was likely going to be used as a pawn this season. Now, you can say that the reason that Amy was in danger of leaving in the first week was due to Rachel. But you would then also say the reason she ended up staying was due to Rachel. And so, you know, that's just like, it's the way things are. She has been used as a pawn in the past. If she wants to blame anyone, she should be blaming Vince because he's the one that opened those doors. And you know, at the same time, I do get like the more she blames Rachel, the more she like publicly is frustrated with Rachel, the more she might be able to separate herself from Rachel. So I get that angle of it as well. My read is that is not entirely what she's doing, although that may be a side effect. I do think that she genuinely feels this way. But I do also understand why she feels that way. But like, I don't think she has the right of it. I think that she's reaching for blame, and I don't think she should be or needs to be. So Jimmy, fearing that Kelly will also come off the block, has made a deal with Kelly. Hey, I think we can work together. What if I put Amy on the block to try to save Adrian, to, you know, potentially take Amy out? I know you wanted Amy out last week. We can take a shot at Rachel that way. Kelly has accepted this offer. Vince, of course, backed it up. So he is moving through with that. Rachel tried to open the door to a potential Vince renom, but Vince has done a good job of sticking with Jimmy this week. We have to give Vince some kudos here because he should be in some trouble, especially given how he operated last week by intentionally keeping Keanu in the game, which is now screwing Jimmy over a second time in a row. And Jimmy does not see the inherent, you know, weakness in that as for with Vince as an ally. So Vince is safe in a spot where he really probably shouldn't be. But okay, here's the thing. I want to say this very, very loud and clear. Because I see the comment and I don't mind the comment, but I want to address it. We were too hard on Vince. No, I very much believe wholeheartedly in everything that I said about Vince in the first week, which was that his decisions were out there wild, terrible. I also said at the time, this does not mean that he's going to be evicted the following week. It does not mean that he can't, go on and have a successful run. Just that he had a terrible first HOH in terms of the decision making that he made, and that he could certainly rebound. And I was actually interested to see how he recovered once he was an HOH. And so, like, I feel like there's this notion that, like, oh, well, because he's not been immediately evicted, that goes on to justify his moves the previous week. And it's just like, well, no. Was Mackenzie immediately evicted following her eviction of Leah? Like, not that I think it's the same, but like, I stand on this, that Vince made a bad decision. He could have made many, many other decisions that were much better. And Keanu wasn't even necessarily one of them. But Kelly survived, which was lucky for Vince. And now he is in, I think, not necessarily making better decisions, but he is in a better place, having not being in a position to be making decisions. So I am fully in the camp of taking Vince 1 week at a time, as he would say, and happy to evaluate Vince continually moving forward. Honestly, we don't even need to necessarily reference the week 1 situation, because he did manage to get a little bit lucky by getting away with it. But again, it's like, we talk about this in poker a lot, that, a decision that you make in the moment is good or bad, regardless of the outcome. That was one of the first things I learned when I learned poker. And I learned it when I was a kid, and it always stuck with me. That, like, it was my dad that taught me poker when I was a kid, and I remember the lesson where it was like Texas Hold'em, 7-2 offsuit, worst hand. You usually want to fold your worst hand, right? Like, you usually want to fold your worst hand. And I remember asking, like, well, but what if it flops like 7-7-2? What if you, like, get a really good hand and you folded the hand, and now you missed out on, like, the really good hand that you could have had? And he said, just because it would have been good doesn't mean that you made the wrong decision folding, because you made the right decision in the moment. You can't predict the future. And so a lot of what we do when we analyze a show like Big Brother, where a lot of luck is involved, is try to analyze what decision is being made in the moment for that moment, not knowing what's coming in the future. Obviously, we can't guarantee, if we say something is a bad move, we can't guarantee that it will guaranteed lead to their eviction the following week. In the same way that Keanu is still here and will continue to be here into next week. So that's the explanation that I'm trying to make. It's the same reason why I, to this day, at least to some degree, defend, like, the Cliff Nicole decision at the final 4 of BB21, where it's like, in the moment, it really did feel like a coin flip. And then after the fact, it looked like an awful mistake. And there were people that didn't see it as a coin flip. And so for those people, it's like, oh, well, I never saw it as a coin flip. I always knew. And for those people, like, kudos, you saw it. But for a lot of people at the time, it did feel like a coin flip. It was the final 5. I apologize. It did feel like a coin flip, and it did not land in the way that a lot of those people, myself included, because it just landed, it just felt like, oh, well, yeah, it was a tough decision to begin with. So that is the explanation, and the explanation for why I may be positive on Vince moving forward, because that decision is in the past, and it may or may not factor into what his game looks like moving forward. I think that Vince is an interesting player. to watch, and I will be very interested to see him. I'm kind of excited to see him. I think that like Vince in power, maybe not great, but Vince is a very kind of he's a little bit of a rat floatery kind of player, and I think that that can be interesting to watch. He's got a little bit of like little Nicole Franzel in him, a little bit of you know. I wouldn't say Andy Herron necessarily, even though he is, of course, the king of rat floating. But he's like very survival mode, and that is working for him so far. And I think that that can be very fun to watch over time. So that is my explanation of Vince and my analysis of Vince. And you know, maybe there's a world someday where we look back and we say, you know what? There were changes made to the format of the game due to the blockbuster competition that maybe justify his decision a little bit more than we gave him credit for. But like, I can't like if you want to tell me that it was the right decision, you really need to tell me like how there weren't better options. I think, and concretely why. You know what I mean? Not just, well, look at his position now. Anyway, it also like absolutely wouldn't be something I recommend any player to do moving into a week 1 HOH. Nominate your ally in a spot where people are telling you you look stupid if you do this. Your ally might get evicted, and then she nearly gets evicted. Again, if Kelly doesn't win that comp and she gets evicted last Thursday, I don't think it doesn't matter what position Vince is in. I think a lot of people are saying, well, terrible first HOH. So that's where Vince is. He has done a good job of getting back in with Jimmy. And I will say also, a huge part of that is leveraging the control he has over Kelly, which he wouldn't be able to do if Kelly had gone home in the spot where he had nominated Kelly to potentially go home. But leveraging Kelly really well to sort of pull that lever on Jimmy, who is now fearful that that Kelly could be a problem for him. So Rachel's attempt fell flat. She didn't even really make too hard of an attempt because she got the read on Jimmy that he wasn't really willing to go down that path. Now, should Jimmy have gone down that path? Maybe, maybe not. You know, I think there are a lot of potential downsides to nominating Vince, and I think that he did not set up the week well enough to make that happen. Putting Vince up, I think, just galvanizes the people like Keanu and Kelly against him in a way that he wouldn't be able to control if not for Vince being there. So, I don't really think that is even like necessarily the play for him. Kelly is talking to Rachel again. Rachel has this uncanny ability to have conversations with people that don't have any impact on the person. Like, Rachel talks to Kelly and tries to make a deal with her, and then Kelly immediately goes and she's like, yeah, still hate Rachel. Rachel tries to talk to Keanu, and Keanu's just like, nah, still don't trust Rachel. For as improved as I would say Rachel's social game is, she is unfortunately in a position where even her allies are like talking smack about her, and it is like, yeah, I mean, this is unfortunately kind of par for the course for Rachel, and despite all of it, as she said, kind of the best result she's had socially. Yeah, I'm confused about this. They're talking about Felicia. Kelly said, "Who's Felicia?" If we squash the beef, I hate that term. This is the first thing I want to do when I'm trying to like make a truce with somebody is criticize the language usage. Oh, Felicia would be phenomenal on Traders. If Felicia is never on the Traders, take away their Emmy for casting. Okay, so Jimmy has made this deal with Kelly to nominate Amy. Amy is upset. Rachel tried to divert, didn't work. However, we just saw as I went live that first of all, Jimmy knows that Kelly is very likely at this point to also be able to remove herself from the block. That's part of why he's trying to make a deal with Kelly and get Vince to neutralize her for him, because he doesn't want both Kelly and Keanu coming after him, considering that Kelly has already proven that she's capable of winning competitions, and so has Keanu to some degree. At least he managed to get that power. So he's trying to neutralize both of them, considering they're both likely to be safe at this point. But it also means that he may need two replacement nominees, and he's trying to avoid making any additional enemies. And so it seems as though he's really going for like who's just bad at comps, and who do I have a reason to potentially nominate. So of course, Amy was already on his radar. Will comes back onto his radar. It's brutal. I said on Thursday, I said, I don't think anybody that wouldn't have nominated Will would nominate Will because of his vote. That was wrong. That was wrong. It was wrong because while I don't think Jimmy would have nominated Will in a normal week, the fact that he needs so many potential replacements, I do think has opened up that door, and I do think he probably wouldn't have nominated Will if not for that vote. And so that vote, I did say it was a mistake, but I think it was an even bigger mistake, unfortunately, because of just some bad luck. And so Will might end up on that block, which again, if he ends up going home, obviously that sucks. But even if he doesn't end up going home, it's still bad for him because now he's been on the block, and that means he's very likely to go up on the block again. So just a brutal outcome for Will, and I really need to see what happened if he was just sort of persuaded into making that vote at the last minute. But man, was that Burger Bros thing such a trap. It was such a trap because, again, like the thing about a Burger Bros alliance, the thing about a Bros alliance like that, if you are not one of the bros, so in Will's instance, he's a little bit older than them. In other instances, sometimes you're the cowboy. Sometimes you are, the woman in the alliance, and it's a bunch of guys. Of course, Nicole was in that spot, but that didn't matter for her based on her positioning. But if you are like, and it also like the thing about Nicole, but usually if there's a woman in the guys alliance, it's because there's like a showman. So if she's actually included in it, that's usually better. If the guy that you're in a showman's with denies having a guys alliance, then you might be in a pretty boys brigade situation. But if you are the one that stands out a little bit, if you're not one of the bros, if you're not working out with them and all of that stuff, then and you just, and that's being too superficial. If you don't vibe with them in the same way, if they included you for maybe superficial reasons, or just like, hey, we need your vote. Like Will just didn't have the connection with those guys that he does with people like Ava. To some degree, at least he used to with Adrian, with Mickey. Like those are the people that he should have been consulting with the most, that he should have been voting with the most. and I think he got caught up in this idea of playing two sides, of being like, I've got the bros over here, and I've got the like the women over here, and like these people over here. And so he was trying to please all sides, but the thing was that like pleasing the bros was worthless. It did nothing for his game. All it did was get him in trouble with the bros, and then when judgment comes knocking, all those bros are going to throw him right under the bus, which is exactly what he's kind of seeing. So, again, I think that kind of mistake is not super likely to immediately come back to bite you, but unfortunately for Will, he's potentially getting a little bit unlucky in this spot, and it might come back to bite him. And then in addition to all of that, his vote is getting him in extra trouble because it's the reason why Keanu is trying to push Will, because Keanu weirdly lies about his vote and thinks Will is his only hope of like getting away with the lie. Whew. So, the conversation that was happening when I started going live is that Jimmy was talking to Keanu, and Jimmy basically said like, listen, we don't need to be doing this. I know you are lying about some things. That's fine. And Keanu's like, oh, I'm not lying about things. I'm not lying about anything. It's like, your vote though. Keanu's like, I voted to keep Amy. Jimmy's like, I mean, I know you voted to evict Amy. I know you voted to keep Zay. Keanu's like, no, that's not true. I don't know how you would know that. And then Jimmy fully is like, I've literally heard from multiple people that they've heard you say that you voted to evict Amy. And like at the very least, that means you're telling different things to different people, dude. And Keanu's like, nah, I voted to keep Amy. It's just like the inflexibility of this man. What are you doing? He literally, the Keanu that we saw on the first night of feeds is the exact same Keanu that we see today. He has not changed an ounce. He is in the exact same mental headspace. He has not adapted at all. He still thinks Rachel is screwing him over. He still thinks he can get away with lying about things. He's still going after the same people. It's just horrendous. And thank you, Casey. Because he would have been gone. The only way that Keanu surviving this week is justified is if he wins HOH next week. Because Keanu not being Keanu as the target makes the week boring because everyone agrees with it. Keanu has no allies. He has no social capital. There's just nothing he can do. So him winning HOH would be fun, but any other time, he's just basically the auto target, unless like very few other people might not target him. So I really hope that he either wins HOH next week or doesn't win Veto and or Blockbuster, because again, there might come a time when he starts to veer over, as he would say, the target gets so big it's invisible, like Dan Giesling. Jimmy with Kelly again. I want to see if he approaches her about Will. But basically, Keanu starts pushing Will because he's trying to blame Will for his vote. Jimmy says, well, hey, what if I put Will on the block for you? Would that help rebuild trust? And Keanu's like, yes. Like Will is a problem for Keanu. And so by the end of that conversation, as we talked about at the start of the stream, Jimmy has now made an offer to Keanu that he will put Will up first over Amy, meaning that if Kelly does not win her veto, it will just be Will, Kelly, and Adrian, which again, I think is a better play overall. But I'm curious to know if he's able to spin that to Kelly. Um, Now, there is another interesting thing that happened, to me at least, which is that Rachel is paranoid for good reason. Rachel, of course, in her original season, she wasn't around for it, but there was a diamond power of veto that was in play on her original season. And she is concerned, or it was at least, that Kelly may have a diamond power of veto. Maybe she needs to earn the diamond power of veto, but whatever it might be. She was like, Keanu basically had a veto power. Why would they give Kelly just a regular veto power? And so Rachel has now gone to Kelly to be like, listen, is your veto diamond colored? Hold on. Keanu now telling Kelly, I think before Jimmy was able to, that Will is the option now. Man, if Kelly was a regular player, I would be like, wow, she's going to catch the fact that Jimmy had the exact same conversation with her. They keep saying it's new. They keep saying it's new that she has to earn it as if they didn't all watch last season. Okay, so two things have happened. Kelly talked to Adrian after her conversation with Jimmy about getting Amy on the block. And Adrian, I think rightfully, said, I don't want Amy on the block. That's dangerous. I don't think I'm guaranteed to stay against Amy. And I think he's right to be concerned. And so he has made that case to Kelly. And now she's talking to Keanu, who has already pitched for Will. And Keanu is also saying that he doesn't think that Amy should leave. He thinks that Will should leave instead. These two things together may convince Kelly to also push for the Will plan over the Amy plan. Not that it may matter at all, because, again, very likely they both will end up going up anyway. But, it does kind of matter, in the event that Kelly Caitlyn's herself. Or I guess in this instance, Leah's herself. But it also speaks to where the votes might be in a Will versus Amy kind of scenario. But man, if I'm Adrian, I'm concerned. I'm very concerned about Will and or Amy nominations. Those are both very weak renoms. And again, like anyone with a brain, Adrian is not very well connected to anybody in the house. He has the Bond alliance at best. And even within that alliance, he's not like super well supported. And against Will, who is injured, and Amy, who nobody respects as a competitor, if he ends up on the block against either one, there's just a lot of reason to take him out. A promising young comp threat who nobody is super connected to. That's scary. That's very scary. He has a shot. I think Jimmy seems to be weirdly. Jimmy is not pushing for Adrian. I think because he's concerned that Adrian might win the blockbuster anyway, and he needs an alternative target. But like, I have to imagine that over the course of the week, you start to think, well, we don't think Adrian will stay on the block, but if he is there, he came second place to Casey Clark. So watch out. All right, we're back. We're back with Kelly. No. They're with the group. So talking to Keanu, so we just explained that. So back to the Rachel conversation with Kelly. Um, she's like, so is your veto like a golden power veto? And Kelly is like, not confirming nor denying really as best as she can. Um, and Rachel's like, if it is a diamond power, you wouldn't put me up, right? Like I don't think, like I think we should be squashing this beef. You know, maybe we could work together. You know, nobody would suspect it. Like, just Rachel's like very concerned because she knows probably better than anyone just how much people can get screwed by things, by twists, perhaps by last minute competition editions. And so she's like really trying to hedge against a potential diamond power of veto, which I think is smart. You know, maybe not going to Kelly and saying, if you have a diamond power of veto, please don't use it on me. You know, maybe you could be a little more subtle than that. But I do think it was very funny. She immediately then has a conversation with Jimmy afterward. I believe Ava has now made a hat out of the bush decoration. So that's going on. Do I have this available to just pull up really quickly? That's not showing. That's unfortunate. Anyway, she has Rachel has a conversation with Jimmy right after, and he's like, "Oh no, her power is not diamond. We know exactly what her power is." She's like, "You sure though?" um, this is the thing too, is that like Jimmy continues to like count votes. I'm using BB Viewer on Firefox. They're talking about like, oh well, Jimmy's like, I've got these 5 votes. They're talking about like votes. Nobody in the house has talked yet about who they might want to vote for. You know, like there's a lot of conversation to be had, and we know from last week just how much conversation there is to be had. So again, I think at the end of the day, especially in this format, you just need to nominate 3 people that you wouldn't mind seeing go. What I'm doing, by the way, for Firefox is I'm using the Tamper Monkey script that Liquidated put out. And then I'm using the browser extension toggle viewer button instead of clicking the BB viewer button. I don't know if that's necessary, but I think, at least in my experience, the Tamper Monkey extension is forcing better video quality, and then the browser toggle is allowing me to use the audio panning BB viewer functions. So until he comes out with like an updated version of BB Viewer itself, I think I need both. I just check out Liquidated on Blue Sky. He's got some things posted. You can also just use BB Viewer by itself, but I don't think it forces the better quality. Pluto has better quality, but it also has ads, which is the downside there. Liquidated is no longer on Twitter. BB Viewer does prevent the still watching prompt, I believe, yeah. Liquidated has posted some instructions on a GitHub page. There might be a link. Someone might have the link for the Tamper Monkey script, which will force the better quality. So last season and this season, to a degree, they've like made the quality of the video on the live feeds awful. It's like 420p or something. And Liquidated finally found a method to force better video quality out of the player. But the Tamper Monkey script does not do audio panning, I believe. So that's why I'm using both in conjunction. I do not know if it works on Mac. I would assume so. So I think the most likely outcome is Tamper Monkey script was updated with auto panning. There you go. So maybe you don't even need the toggle now. Although I still do like the toggle for just like the full screen and everything. I tried to use the other one, the second set of instructions. I couldn't get it to work. I didn't know how to do it. Luckily, it just BB Viewer just works in Firefox. So most likely outcome right now is Amy and Will on the block. It is possible, given that Keanu wants Will over Amy right now, it is possible that Kelly follows suit. We did hear Jimmy say that if Will goes up, he wants Will to go home. That might be true. This could snowball onto Will quickly, but there should still be a push for Amy. That is what Kelly would have originally wanted. There's still this idea that you can take a shot at Amy to take a shot at Rachel. Will should have some support, in particular Zach, who is in a very, very good position and who would want Amy gone. But we saw that Zach did not win the vote last time. He did not win the day. So I don't know if he has the swing to pull something like that, or if he would even want to try very hard to do so, because it would be the second time in a row that he's campaigning against Rachel's interests. And if like Vince and Jimmy are not on board, that could be bad. Then there's the matter of like, where do Mickey and Morgan fall? They had a good relationship with Will. Morgan is crying right now. Again, though, the bad thing for Adrian is that like, if Will is on the block, you know, Ava should technically be looking to save Adrian, but Will is also an ally of hers. And like Zach should technically be trying to save both Adrian and Will. And so but they have to talk about the scenario where it's Will or Adrian. And that gets very messy. So it's just, I would say prepare for mess, prepare for a lot of mess here. I don't love, again, because again, Amy will have Rachel in her corner for sure. Will and Adrian do have people, but I don't know if they have them as locked in, determined as Amy has Rachel. And that matters. We saw it matter last week. It might matter again. I do not think Jimmy would nominate Rachel, even if he found out that she told Amy, which was kind of obvious that she did, to be honest. Jimmy, I believe Jimmy when he tells Vince that he really thinks it's valuable to keep Rachel in the game for him, and I think it's true. I think it is true for him. But yeah, man, I don't know. I feel like Jimmy is good at comps. And man, I really just feel like his primary concern should be taking out a comp threat. Adrian is up there. I think Adrian leaving is Jimmy's best outcome by far. And his second best outcome, I think, is somebody like Riley leaving. But Will leaving, Will leaving's not bad. It's not bad. It's not ideal, but it's not bad. Amy leaving, I don't know. I think Amy leaving is like neutral at best. He's told a lot of people he doesn't want Adrian to go. I would do that if I were him, because Adrian is theoretically the most likely person to win the blockbuster competition at this point. But I also, if I were him, would not mean it. Although I do think he means it right now, at least. But again, there's plenty of time. He might change his mind. What about Zach? I mean, quite frankly, Zach is the very obvious person that he should be going after. Zach or even somebody like Vince. But can he feasibly do it this week? I don't think so. Not at this point. If you're going to take a shot like Zach or Vince or like who's another person he should maybe consider targeting, or even like Rachel to some degree, you have to set it up earlier, I think. It'd probably be too last minute to try to swing. I say that. Let me think. The thing is that you need to because the problem is that you need to have the right other nominees up there, and you have to have the right people like in place to make sure the vote is there. If you put like Zach up now, does he even leave if he's on the block against, say, Amy? I don't think so. I think Amy gets evicted there. So you kind of have to make sure that Zach is up against like Vince, and like you could do Zach, Vince, and Adrian, something like that. That could maybe work. Zach, Vince, and there's not many other people you could nominate to make that work, but Lauren even. Like if you're gonna take a shot, you need to really do it. And yes, of course, how could we forget? Zach would use his power. Again, we're trying to like analyze it from the perspective of Jimmy, and obviously he doesn't know that Zach has the power. So Zach having the power, I don't think changes the calculus on whether it's a good move for Jimmy. But we, in the same way that like Cody trying to take out Paul in week 1 of BB19 was not necessarily a bad move. It just turned out really, really bad. Ashley is an interesting case. I think Ashley is similar to Amy to me, only even more enticing. In that Ashley is a threat who nobody really gets along with outside of Rachel and Amy. And she is not a problem for Jimmy. She's not after Jimmy. Morgan's talking about Riley. Alex, thank you for the $5 over on YouTube. Do I have a winner pick for the season now that it's been a week? Zach has to be your default, I think. I mean, if Morgan is advocating for Riley, I think she's talking sense. I think that Riley is a better option. Well, I say that, but Jimmy is close to Catherine, I think. Riley's too much of a wild card. I couldn't trust it. Coco, thank you for the subscription. Welcome to the Robot Army. I think there's a play where you can keep Riley around because he's attached to Catherine and you're close to Catherine. But I don't even think that Catherine is close enough to Jimmy for that to matter. And even if she was, I think that Riley is too much of a wild card anyway. I think throwing Riley up there and then all but guaranteeing that one of Riley or Adrian leaves this week would be a much more successful HOH week than Amy or Will leaving. And Morgan is completely correct when she says that like Rachel should feel like the heavy hitters is looking out for her. If we nominate Amy a second time in a row, what does that look like to Rachel? It looks bad, I'll tell you. But I don't think Jimmy cares. Is Adrian leaving bad for Jimmy? I don't think so. I think that Adrian leaving is even better than Riley leaving for Jimmy. But yeah, he's not really, I think, super looking in that direction. But again, that could change. Corey was saying he's seeing Zach, Vince, Lauren becoming a power structure. Andromeda, thank you for the 100 bits. I don't really think Lauren is in a power structure. I think there are, maybe this is a little bit more like BB Can 6, where it's like, I think there are some pillars. Remember BB Can 6 when we had the pillars of strategy? Who was it? It was Paris. It was, oh my God, I'm forgetting his name. I feel so bad. He pulled his own little Johnny. Thank you. It was Paris. It was Johnny. It was Kayla. Back in BB Can 6. I feel like there are some pillars of strategy in this season right now. And so we have Jimmy. We have, I would say right now, like Morgan and Mickey are kind of on a bit of a pillar. I think we have Zach. And I think maybe in a fourth pillar of Rachel. And I think that maybe we can call, I mean, the thing is that Morgan is the more visible part of the pillar, but I do think that Mickey is like there calling some shots as well. Oh, you heard that Corey was saying that people should pre-order my book. Oh, interesting. That's an interesting thing that Corey said. Yeah, I mean, I guess if Corey said it, I guess you guys should just do it. So yeah, I see maybe kind of four pillars of strategy. And a bunch of players sort of hovering around them. Where in BB Can 6, you kind of had those three pillars and they had their people. In this season, you kind of have the pillars and then you have like a player like Vince who is trying to float. I mean, Vince is a floater, like full on proper definition. Vince is a floater. And he is floating between those pillars in any way he can. You have Lauren, like people like Lauren, loosely attached to like to Zach to some degree, but I think she also is a little bit kind of like adrift. I think that you have like Ava attached to the Zach side of things a little bit, stuff like that. Like, yeah, because like the reason I wouldn't say Vince is part of a structure is that he is too malleable. Like Vince has some people loosely attached to him, but he conforms to whoever he is with. Um, well, the thing about Paris was certainly a floater, but she had like an actual crew that she went around with. Like she was part of a solid structure. And Vince might get there. I don't think he's chosen a solid structure yet, or if he ever will. Um, you're on chapter 3, Zuka. Thank you. Yeah, there. I just saw this today. There are people who are reading the book because they have access to the advanced reader copies, um, which is very exciting. I'm already seeing like reviews. I saw some. I saw some today. Um, and it terrified me. I was not prepared. Um, they've all been good so far, so that's nice. But there was one I found that was like great book, loved it, 3 stars, and I was like, oh, thanks. um, honestly though, like happy to have no because that's like I think the people that are writing those reviews are like they don't even know who I am. Yeah, it's like NetGalley, I think. Never heard of it before. But I think a lot of those people are like, you know, I like Big Brother. I saw this on the list of things to get, and so I got one. So the fact that they seem to like it, like, is cool. Um, and then I currently have three ratings on Goodreads, 2 5s and a 4. So, uh, genuinely though, like I like, um, it's just weird. It's just weird. It's just weird that it's out there and people are reading it, and like honestly, I want to talk to these people. If you're reading the book, please feel free to send me your thoughts, as long as they're good thoughts, I guess. Uh, because it's I don't know. I just feel like I usually do a thing and I get like I have a chat. Everything I do has a chat. If I tell a joke, I see you guys laugh. I just wrote a book for 3 years and it's like out in the ether and people are responding to it without me knowing what the response is. They're spending like 15 hours reading my book and then being like, this was a good book. And I'm like, oh, what else? uh You sent an email inviting me to speak to your class. That's very cool. I think I've seen the email. What I will say is, if you have sent me a message in the past like week or two, um, I will try to get back to you, but uh, I have not had much time to respond to anybody. So I have a queue that I will work through. Um, I'm still I'm still trying to make sure that I just found out that the physical advanced copies still haven't been sent out yet to a lot of the people that I have on my list. So I'm trying to get that going early next week. Um, Because like that's like I plan to send physical copies out to anyone I talked to for the book, and then some additional, you know, people who are interested, friends, whatever. And so even that has been tough. Like sending the book out to like especially like people who are in it, and then like waiting for waiting for the response. Because it's like I feel like it makes me very unlike how I normally would be. Um, where like all of a sudden I am like a teenager who is worried about being left on red. You know what I mean? It's like here is my book. It is this is my soul. Here it is. And then it's like it's books are take a long time to read sometimes, and so it's just like still reading it like I guess it wasn't good enough to binge, huh? Okay, that's fine. uh I keep having to tell myself like I don't read. Some of my favorite books took me forever to read. um People are busy. Stop being stupid. All right. Ava's talking to Adrian. In my mind, currently, is this the only book I'm writing for the foreseeable future? If I have my way, I'm writing more books. I do not currently have anything locked down, though. I will say, I did note that today. Let me still see. Let me see if this is still true. Parvati has retaken television TV shows. She's overtaken me on Amazon, which is first of all what I expected, but second of all, Amazon is not my primary ordering space. Also, I would never expect to have beaten Parvati in the first place. Also, I've heard her book is really good. Could I write a whole book about Devil's Plan? That would be hard because let me tell you, I had to read at least one Dutch book for my book. One Dutch book, many Dutch articles, a German article, some others, and it's hard. Because obviously I have it translated, but it's like, I had to like manually translate a Dutch book. It was a biography of John de Mol, um, which was hard to do in the first place. And then, there's like intricacies of language, and like auto translations are not always going to be perfect. So, yeah, trying to write a book about Devil's Plan when I don't know a lick of Korean would be tough. Why did I have to do that? Because there aren't a lot of English books about John de Mol, unfortunately. I would love to try writing fiction. That is very much what I would love to try to do. I did actually consider reaching out to some Dutch fans for help, but I have talked about this before. I'm terrible at asking people for help, so didn't do it. Yeah, man, the feed cuts have been awful the last couple days. Like really bad, like frustratingly bad. Which is weird because they were totally not bad the first few days. Like they were up for huge periods of time. And now all of a sudden they're cutting constantly. Like I don't get what the change is. Weekend Crew. It was bad on Friday though. Yesterday was like really, really frustrating. Is he talking about Catherine? Is John DeMol the equivalent? John DeMol is, I would not say, is the equivalent to Simon Cowell. I don't actually. I guess I don't know enough about Simon Cowell. I honestly don't really know if I can find a parallel for John DeMol. He's one of the most prolific reality format creators in the world, and has to be close to the most successful. And it started with Big Brother. Well, didn't start with Big Brother. You find that in the book, but Big Brother was his first big, big hit. Yeah, he's gone on to make tons of shows. He's still making show concepts. Who created the real world? I don't recall their names off the top of my head. I do mention them in the book. There's a little known Dutch show that actually claimed that the real world stole their concept, which I also mentioned in the book. Yeah, I mean, just little things like that. Ava reassuring Kelly that she does not believe that she threw the veto competition. Like, because why wouldn't you say that? I don't care what Ava actually believes. Why wouldn't she tell Kelly, I don't think you threw that? Because Kelly doesn't want people to think she threw it. So why is Ashley talking about Kelly throwing this comp? What are you doing? They don't seem to be doing anything else with the accomplice twist, so doesn't seem like they'd replace her. You're Dutch and from the Netherlands. Knowing a lot about the Dutch version, so you're curious about it in the book. Listen, you're probably going to be my toughest audience because I did research. You live it. You know what I mean? So I hope I didn't get too many things wrong, quite frankly. I don't go too deep, really. Like the thing I focus the most on is like the influences of where the idea came from. And I lightly touch on the Netherlands version. Um, but I would say again, like the book is, from my perspective, like I did a ton of research for it. I have a lot of citations, but to me, this was about telling the story of the show. Um, because trying to like it's sort of like when I do a live feed update, I don't tell you every single conversation. I tell you the ones that feel relevant to the story that we're telling for the day, that are relevant to the, overall story moving forward. And I felt like I had to do that for the book too. Like I had to choose what is the relevant thing that I'm going to talk about. And when it came to touching on other versions of the show, I did speak to a player from BBUK. And I did some research into BBUK and the Netherlands and stuff like that. Um, but like overall, their inclusion in the story is more to support the story I'm telling about the US than like doing their shows justice, I would say. Because I'm sure that their shows on their own have a lot more nuance than how I talked about them and would deserve their own books written about them. Um, I have seen that there's a petition for Wheel of Time, but I haven't seen that there's like likely to be a ton of success. Did I talk to past production members to talk? Um, I considered it, obviously. Um, I had some potential uh people suggested to me, people that I could have reached out to. Um, I did try to reach out to Arnold Shapiro toward the early stages of the book because I thought he might be interesting to talk to. I didn't get a hold of him. Um, and I kind of came to the conclusion that I didn't think I needed any of that for the story I wanted to tell. Um, and that I didn't want this to be like an expose book. I didn't want it to be like, buy this book, I will reveal some dirty secrets that you don't know about. Um, like the reason I want to be a writer is not to be like a journalist. I want to be a storyteller. And so uh, I wanted to tell the story of the show, not spill secrets about the show or anything like that. Yeah, like Jonathan Penner. um, and I know that's likely going to be disappointing to some people. Um, but I think also like you can't please everyone, and I have to remember that. And if I did write an expose style book, I think there are plenty of people who would enjoy my book that wouldn't enjoy that kind of book. So um, that's what I'm trying to keep in my brain. doing their prayer circle. That's the other thing. I very much wrote the book like for myself, if that makes sense. I very much wrote it in the way that I would most like to read this kind of book. And although I get self-conscious about it, every time I read the book, I'm like, oh, I like this. And I'm proud of it. So I'm also trying to keep that in my brain. It's the exact same reason I did the plushie, yeah. I don't think I'm capable of creating content that I don't feel passionate about, that like I wouldn't enjoy, if that makes sense. I've tried it. Um but I don't think it A works or B is sustainable. So I'm very very lucky that what I enjoy doing is has hit a chord. Big Brother 1 is so different than all the others. That's kind of how the book starts. The book starts on the premise of, here's a book about this show that's lasted 25 years. And its first season sucked. So what happened? Very cool, Finzel. Thank you. I did talk about the knives. My agent seems very pleased with how the book is doing so far. My editors and marketing team seem very pleased about how. So, I don't know how much I can talk about this, but like me trying to read into things, I like basically what they said was we are going to use the you know excitement around the launch to try to see if we can get like more press, essentially. So I guess maybe the success that they have with that will indicate to me how actually successful it is at the moment. But theoretically, I think the idea is to like get me interviewed to do the stuff, some of the stuff that Parvati's doing. Like she's being interviewed by every podcast known to man, and like every news outlet that covers reality in any way has done an interview with her. Um, and she's going to do it. She's going to events and stuff. I don't think I'm going to be doing that or anything, but um, theoretically, uh, just like getting it out, because I think that like we've hit my audience. Those orders have slowed down. And so the next step is like, hey, this is where like the base is. There's some interest in this. Let's try and get this in front of like a general audience to keep the orders coming and stuff. And I'm sure there are people who haven't ordered it yet from this audience as well and stuff like that. But Zeroth, who would I say was the most surprising interview I conducted? Who had things to say I wasn't expecting? Um, that's kind of the thing. Like. I want to make sure I say this in a way that doesn't seem negative, but like there weren't any interviews that surprised me. But that's because I specifically did interviews with people who I knew would give me what I needed for the book, if that makes sense. I already knew what story I was going to tell. This wasn't really a story outside of the first couple chapters. This wasn't really a story that I went in like finding. It was a story more so that I had, that was just about how do I tell it in the best way. And also like part of it too is that like I've already interviewed many of these people and asked the kinds of questions that I already needed to have answered for this book. Um, so I reached for a lot of those as well. Like I have a couple of Hardy quotes early in the book that like I didn't need to bother Hardy to interview him again for the book because I already talked to Hardy. And uh and I mean, maybe there's a world where I talk to Hardy again and I get like a more specific quote that is even more of a fit for what I was doing. But again, I don't like asking people for things. So I was like, I have one. I have some quotes. That's they're, you know, these already work. Um Also too, like part of it was that so because again, like the first few chapters of the book are slightly different in that they required more research from things I didn't know. And so those were the hardest to write also because like they were reliant on interviews and research. And I not only couldn't write them, but I couldn't even figure out what I was going to write for sure. Um until I finished the research or did the interviews. So they became very reliant on those things, which was a much more frustrating writing process for me. Once I got into the sections that I already knew most of what I was writing, um, it was a much. I feel like those chapters are um, better stories because I was able to focus more on how I wanted to tell the story rather than what the information was. That makes sense. But I do still like both kinds of chapters a lot. Do I have any interest in writing for film or television? Not as much as writing books. I mean, I'm not going to turn it down if I have an opportunity like that, but like I went to college for screenwriting and I don't enjoy it as much as prose. Um I think also like I'm not like Kelly, I have a little bit of aphantasia, and so like writing for visuals is not, I think, a specialty of mine. I would like to think that I could write good dialogue, but um, it's such a visual medium. It's just not, I think, where my brain likes to be. Um, I like if I how do I imagine fantasy novels when I read? It's really just the words. I focus on the words. Um, I think it's probably like a, you know, like a spectrum of like how much do you have it, but like I have a very vague image. It's almost like a blurry painting in my head. So like if I think about the Wheel of Time and I think about pretty much any time they're traveling in the Wheel of Time, in my head is like the cover of The Eye of the World. You know what I mean? Like just vaguely that with slightly different surroundings sometimes. Like, oh, they're in the desert now, so it's sandy, probably. Um, I'm not kidding. So when authors have lengthy descriptions, like in the Wheel of Time, for surroundings and stuff like that, I that loses me. I usually skip it as much as possible because unless it's like particularly relevant to the story, it means nothing to me. Um, so I mean, I'm sure that impacts me as a writer. I did try, like, I mean, yeah, I mean, like in the book, there are probably very few times I describe someone's appearance. I think I described Matt Hoffman's appearance because I felt it was relevant to his personality. Other than that, I don't think I did. Um, when I described people I was talking about, it was yeah, way more about like how I see them, their vibe, their personality. I did occasionally have to say this is a white man because it was relevant to what they were saying. One of the more awkward descriptors I've had to. Taylor asked a question. Is Taylor here? Ah, when, not if I write my follow up. What do I think the major focus on BB's. Sorry. What do I think the major focus on BB's modern impact on American culture is? Um, like, what is like the biggest impact? I really need to. Steph told me to do this and I forgot to do it. I need to VIP Taylor so that I can more easily see her comments. How do I do this? Community roles. Oh wait, no, I can just do it from here, can't I? Maybe not. I'm so bad at Twitch. It's actually embarrassing. The Taylor Mac. All right, hopefully that worked. You also have to like manually type it in, and then I'm always just concerned that it's like gonna be the wrong person. Um, so I think the question was, what is like the biggest impact on like American culture or world? Let me find the question again. On American culture. Or is it like um what would be my focus for like a follow-up? Um because I can probably try to answer both. I think that and I because I do talk about this in my book. I think the biggest impact that you can sort of see spread from Big Brother is probably like kind of a negative one. You know, Big Brother definitely helped inspire a lot of future styles of reality shows. And um and I think that like the further you go down that rabbit hole, the worse things get. Um, I think that like there's probably a world where you could tie something like The Apprentice to having been influenced in some way by Big Brother. Um, but I do also ask the same the question of like, you know, how does that mean that like something like The Apprentice wouldn't have existed if not for Big Brother? You know, was Big Brother the spawn of this, or was it an inevitable stop along the current that was already coming? You know what I mean? Um, Post season 24, when I write the follow up, where does the story go from there? Is the question. Um, I have thought about that a little bit. I asked Quinn. I asked Quinn this question. I asked Quinn what would be your if you had to like choose a cultural analysis sort of meta way of looking at your season. What do you think would would you say? And Quinn mentioned the idea of like how he feels like in his season there were a lot of people who were playing for not playing for the win, so to speak. That were like more playing to like make an impact, make a name for themselves. Um, and I do think that's a big topic. It is what some people who I interviewed talked about. I don't get too deep into it in the book, um, but I think that there's something there. I talked to Quinn about that. Something else that I thought about was like, and this is again something that's a little bit in the book, but not super heavily explored. But the concept of how the show turns you against your allies, and causes you to devalue your relationships in the house. I think that there's something interesting to explore there. Obviously, we just saw it with Vince and Kelly, but we saw it also on Quinn's season. Um, and uh, and I think that you know the question then becomes like, is there a good story to tell there? Um, and I think honestly, like Quinn might be a good example of how to tell that story. But I'm not sure that that would be strong enough to move from. I think that more likely it would be Mackenzie, and I could talk about Mackenzie by discussing Chelsea, who is sort of a new era strategic powerhouse, who also was on a season where things are starting to shift in a new direction. We can talk about the AI Arena, now Blockbuster. Um, and so I think I can tie all of those things into a chapter largely focused around 26 that has a lot of Chelsea, that talks about Mackenzie taking out Leah, but also Mackenzie taking Chelsea, the change in competitions. And, you know, now I'm starting to see like a loose structure for a chapter, maybe. I wouldn't want to skip Jag though, as like the peak. I think I would probably include Jag's season as like this is the peak, the culmination of competitions, and at the start of that chapter, and then lead into Chelsea's season and talk about all those things. That would probably all be one chapter. I say that, but there were some chapters that turned into two chapters when I wrote the book. But that's basically how I wrote it. I never want to just be talking about one thing at a time. I want to make sure that every story I'm telling uh, is part of one greater thing within the chapter. Um, if possible, at least. Uh, so anyway, good question. You got me thinking. I don't know why the feeds are cut during dinner. It's wild. I do mention 9/11 for BB2. Yep. Definitely a huge portion, not portion, huge thing that happened, obviously in the country, but also for the show. COVID, I actually didn't talk too much about. No. I think I mentioned BBOT finding about the election results. I think there's like a sentence. Um, and did I watch BB1 for the book? A little bit, yeah. Not the whole season, but I watched the first episode all the way through because I was trying to help people visualize what that was about. Vince and Jimmy hugging. We should chat, Jimmy says. We should chat is interesting. It implies that Jimmy has changed his mind from the last time they talked. That could be Will first, then Amy. It could also be the Riley idea, but more likely just Will over Amy. Which mainline season was talked the least about in the book? I'm real light on 13. 18 got like a sentence probably. 19. 22. Those seasons. Those seasons I still mention them to make sure you're not lost, that I haven't like fully like left you in the dark. But no big stories to tell in those seasons from the perspective of my book. Did I cover? No. So Matt was BB25. So I actually do refer to season 25 a couple of times because I was writing the book still during that season, but no, nothing of substance from that season. I do mention BB Can, but nothing too deep. Actually, BB Can was canceled while I was writing the book. So I think I actually went back and updated some of what I said about BB Can to include the fact that it was canceled. What season do I mention the most? I'm not going to tell you. I would say there are, because people are asking about the controversies like season 15. I would say there are two main chapters dedicated to I say two. There's really three. Three primary chapters dedicated to what I would call controversial things. But I say main because it's throughout the entire book. I mean, controversy and Big Brother go hand in hand. Maki's curse finally got BB can, yeah. The chapters are named, yeah. I named them. Some I'm proud of. Some are, I think, fine, in my opinion. I tried to make all of them at least a little bit clever. But I named all of them after I wrote them. After I finished the whole book. Yeah, like I would say there are some that I really like. There are some that are just obvious. And there are some that I'm like, oh, this is kind of clever if you think about it. It could mean a couple of things. Shash, thank you for the subscription. Welcome to the Robot Army. Is Big Brother in danger with the Paramount merger and turmoil? I mean, it's certainly not great. But theoretically, Big Brother should be fine, considering it's relatively cheap to produce. It's not that cheap to produce, but it's relatively. It's like, it's got a long history. It's just an easy thing to throw on in the summer. It fills a lot of holes in the programming. But you never know. I mean, anybody could come along, new ownership, and decide, Is there anything that got cut that I think could have made the final edit? Honestly, not really. That was the thing. Is I expected my editor to cut things, and she told me to add even a little bit more. I think I said this before, but basically, I turned it in, and the response was, "This is great. I love the stuff about you. We have a little bit more of that." And so I was like, fine. It's like the stuff I have the least amount of perspective on, because anytime I talk about myself, I feel like it's too much. And I had really already felt like basically there's I'll tell you a little story. In one of the early chapters, I recognize I'm writing this book. It should have personality. I should explain my own personal connection to this and why this is meaningful to me, because that will hopefully help explain why it might have been meaningful to other people too, right? So this is like a firsthand example, and so I went to write the headlines of why it was meaningful to me. Headline being like, I mean, I'm not going to say because I don't want to spoil it, but basically like, this was meaningful to me because of X, because X happened to me, and therefore you can see why this would have been good. And then I was like, that's not interesting. That's not an interesting way of saying that. Like, I'm just saying it point blank. Like, where's the story in that? Like, where's what makes that interesting? Like, I want to show, I don't want to tell. And so I detailed it a little more. I was like, I told a small story to explain what the thing was that then made me relate to the thing. And I was like, well, now I'm just half-assing a story. So I was like, oh, okay. I just need to, let me just try it. Let me just dive in and tell a tiny little mini story about my childhood. Deeply, I mean, I didn't get into the traumatic parts, but, a relatively traumatic part of my childhood. So that I really make you hopefully feel what I'm talking about, and then subsequently you understand why this thing meant so much to me. And that is ultimately like where the stuff about me comes in, I hope, which is by telling a little bit of my story and seeing how Big Brother related to me and how I related to Big Brother. you you understand it just a little bit more, and you feel a little bit more connected to the book and the story I'm telling. Um, so ultimately, the answer is kind of no. There's really wasn't much that got cut. Um, I was trying to be uh careful because I was already adding so much to the word count. um, Definitely a lot about social media impact. Yeah. How do I describe Big Brother live feeds to someone without sounding like a creep? That's all over. That is one of the basic premises of the book. If you heard me read the first paragraph, you know that I start it basically with that. Do I cite any academic studies in the book? A few. Um, Nothing too serious. It's not a science book or anything, but uh, definitely a few. I have not seen the video of Tucker discussing Kelly. What did he say? If the execs at Big Brother read my book, what would I want their takeaway to be? That's a good question. Because I've obviously thought a lot about people like Alison Grodner and Arnold Shapiro reading the book. Um, like if they like, I don't know them very well at all. I really I know what they make, but I don't know them very well. So I have no idea if they would read the book. Especially after I feel like they had a not great experience last year. Um, Genuinely, my hope is that despite the fact that I obviously am critical of them at times, uh, my hope is that they would read it and feel like this feels accurate. This feels like any criticism that is there is backed up and feels maybe like warranted, justified, like understandable, maybe. Um, and I mean, like, ideal world, fantasy land would be like, hey, maybe I understand some of the criticisms that we normally might ignore because they're people yelling on social media. And this feels a little more grounded and humanized in terms of like the way in which it's being expressed. And like could maybe take that in. Who knows? Again, it's not something I would expect. Nor would I even like necessarily presume that they don't already know these things, and just either disagree or already trying their best. Who knows? Certainly doesn't always seem like it, uh, but also genuinely, I think another part of it would be like I would hope that they come away from the book feeling like proud of what they've made. I don't know how often they feel pride in what they make. Obviously, I've speculated before that sometimes it feels like they're bored with it. But they've made something that has impacted a lot of lives, and mine included. And I mean, genuinely, I would hope that like that it makes them feel good a little bit. I feel like if I made something and somebody wrote a book about it, and it was the book I wrote, I think I would feel really proud. I think I would feel really good about what I made. I would also feel like probably the same way I do right now when I make content about the show, which is like it's not all good. there are there are bad things about this thing, and I don't know how much I'm contributing to that. Um, but I think I would also feel like it's kind of cool. Kind of cool that I'm a part of this. She said she looked too much like Lisa for him to support her. I heard that. I thought that was a joke. I thought people were kidding. It does feel to me again. This is like pure speculation. I've never even spoken to these people, but it feels to me like with season 26 and now this season that they are trying harder. Um, that they seem to care more than it felt like they did in previous seasons. And the other thing too is that like not all decisions come from one person necessarily. Like there are a lot of people that work on the show. Um, and those people are often undercredited for their contribution. And so it could just be that those people did something different. It could be that there are new people there. Like there's all kinds of things that could be going on. How much do we talk about RHAP in the book? Um, I mean, basically, like again, like I sort of I needed to explain who I was in the book, and so part of that was explaining the podcast, a little bit of an origin story, but not too deep. Don't understand why they're making the feed so much worse by taking away flashback and making them low quality. I don't know either. I don't really like. I don't really get it. Um, it's also like here's the thing too. It's like it could like there are worlds where the reason these things happen is because like those are the concessions made in order to keep the live feeds going. You know what I mean? There are worlds where they just did it to screw with us because they hate us. Like there are so many possible explanations. At least they didn't do the BB can and claim it was to protect their house guests because that was wild to me. It was wild and insulting to anybody that read it. For the book, I did. I read the first time that the BBUK took away the feeds, and they did describe it, I think, as like we're evolving the way that we provide content. We're exploring new options, new areas. All right. Well, I said it was going to be a short stream, and look at me. I'm 2 hours deep. And unique way of spell regressing. Honestly, I forgot what I just said. What was I just talking about? Oh, right, the feeds. Yeah. Evolving, yes. Exactly. Pulchritudinous. I really should have taken a nap today. I've been taking naps every day. Something happened to me yesterday. This is the last thing I'm going to say before I end the stream. I took a nap. Usually like 20 minutes are my naps. And they happen because I literally can't function. I lose all ability to do anything. I'm too tired. I like lay down wherever I am and I fall asleep for 20 minutes because I'm sleep deprived. Those are my naps. Yesterday, I took a nap, woke up 20 minutes later, was like, woof, man, I'm tired. That knocked me out. Didn't get up, and then took a second nap right away. Back-to-back naps. Never happened to me in my life. I take one nap, I'm awake now. I couldn't sleep if I wanted to. But yesterday, a second 20-minute nap. Immediately. Go to bed, it was like 1 p.m. So that's where I'm at the moment. Maybe I dreamt I woke up, yeah. All right, anyway, that's what I got. Thank you for hanging out with me. Hope you enjoyed the stream. This was like a 1 hour feed update viewing and then a 1 hour Q&A, but it was a very fun Q&A. Which is usually what happens when we're watching the feeds. You know, they start having dinner, feeds were down. What are you gonna do? But thanks for hanging out. Thank you for the wonderful questions. And I will see all of you tomorrow for the update.